So I'm going to tell you how an API can power a relationship. Ooh. How it can power Microsoft Auto Update. Awesome. OK, how an API can power a relationship between a tiny company and a huge company. So Outside In is a hyperlocal news aggregator, and our mission is to bring together all of the web's information around neighborhoods. And so the way that we do that today is we look at about 55,000 RSS feeds and process about 75,000 stories a day and associate them with a database of about 2 million regions and places in the US. So we serve that geographically organized information back up in a variety of different places, including, pretty recently, the homepage of CNN.com. And so when I talked to Randy from Mashry about what story I could tell you guys here today, she wanted to hear this story of how a 20-person company working in this tiny, narrow office in the Flatiron district of Manhattan ends up providing hyperlocal headlines for the world's biggest news brand, which operates out of this massive headquarter building in Georgia with its own postal address. So to be totally straightforward, we have a two-part relationship with CNN. There's the data licensing deal under which we provide those headlines to them. And then they also made a strategic investment in our company late last year. So the investment is great. You know, it's like a huge validation of what Outside In is doing as a business. It got us in the Wall Street Journal. My dad forgave me for not going to law school. But really what I want to talk to you about is the data integration. Seriously, he was like, this company with a funny name is going somewhere. So, because the data integration is based on our API. So I want to tell you the story of how we got here. Outside In originally launched as a consumer destination site. And our original mission was a little bit simpler than what I just told you. We just were trying to bring together what hyperlocal bloggers were writing about in their neighborhoods. So you could see all the bloggers in Brooklyn together on one page. And we still have a consumer destination site. This is our latest iteration of it, and it's great for a lot of reasons. But the audience growth boundaries of that are pretty narrowly defined. And so we realized fairly quickly that we needed to seek out partnerships with other brands to distribute our content more widely. And so the natural partnership for us is a mainstream media website, so a TV station, a radio station, a newspaper that has some kind of web presence. Because these sites have a strong brand in their market, a lot of loyal users, and they need a really cost-efficient way to get content. We have all this geographically organized content, and we need a way to get it in front of eyeballs. So we started out with a few one-off implementations. We've got presentations on the mind today. That were a lot of manual work, especially for our front-end team and our QA team. And we sort of faced a little bit of an identity crisis as a company, because we looked at the work we were doing and thought, are we turning into a web development shop? You know, at the most, we've only ever had one designer, 2 front-end developers at our company. And this isn't how we wanted to see ourselves. We wanted to see something that Ty mentioned earlier. We wanted to see our data as our product. We wanted to see our product being a platform for local news. So we tried to scale the way that we were integrating, that we were working with partners by creating a self-service platform called Outside In for Publishers. And what this self-service platform did was it allowed anyone with a website to come and set up hyperlocal news pages with a map and a list of headlines in their market in a matter of minutes and install it on their website. And this was great for a lot of our partners, like the Chicago Breaking News Center, which is a Chicago Tribune property, because it allowed them to customize the colors and the fonts to fit their brand. But it did have some limitations, right? This was our vision of how hyperlocal news should be presented, but it might not have been everyone's vision of it. And also, if a company already had an application, they couldn't take our data and integrate it. So actually what happened, and this was a huge eye-opener, is a developer for the Star News Online, which is a New York Times consortium newspaper based out of Wilmington, North Carolina, actually went and reverse engineered our API. And this is really similar to a story that Chad Dickerson from Etsy told at this conference last year, where the husbands and boyfriends of women who sell their scarves and their silkscreen t-shirts, like I do on Etsy, reverse engineered their API that was powering their applications in order to build the tools that their wives and girlfriends wanted to sell their products. So for us, this was a really exciting time. We had an API that was public at the time, but it was really simple. It did one thing, and we really viewed it at the company as a toy for developers, as something to raise our profile in the tech community, as something we just had to have because we had to have an API to be a tech startup. So this was a moment when I think we realized that an API could be a viable business product for us. Around the same time, we were starting to talk to CNN about what they wanted out of a hyperlocal news provider. And there are a couple of reasons that we were a good fit for them as opposed to other people that might be able to provide them with local news. They needed to be able to prioritize the stories from their affiliate TV stations above any other stories when they showed local headlines because they've got this really strong relationship with TV stations around the country. They needed to be able to curate stories, and our Outside In for Publishers dashboard actually, in addition to letting you create JavaScript widgets on the fly, also did that already. And then these last 2 points are work that we did specifically in response to their needs. We created a filter that automatically suppresses potentially objectionable content with charming words in it. And we were able to use our knowledge of geography to guarantee them a minimum number of stories. So Valerie Evanoff, who is our main point person at CNN, who unfortunately just left, I'm really sad. So she grew up in Broken Arrow, Oklahoma. And if CNN made a request to us and said they needed 10 stories in Broken Arrow, Oklahoma, and they needed them to all be published within the last day, we probably wouldn't be able to meet that, right? So we use our understanding of geography to filter back up to the surrounding metro area, which is Tulsa, and to provide them stories from Tulsa in addition, which are still geographically relevant to somebody reading in Broken Arrow. So once we had decided that CNN and Outside In had decided that we were going to work together, the API as an integration point was really a no-brainer. And I think that the way that I would summarize it is that it removes friction from the relationship, and it does it in 4 main ways. So the first is performance. CNN sees 8 to 10 million unique visitors a day, which is like maybe just a tiny bit more traffic than we see at Outside In, a little bit. So being able to give them a lightweight data response instead of a JavaScript widget is huge because it takes a fraction of the throughput. The data can be cached on their side, and they do cache it a little bit. They're making 1.5 million calls to our API a day, which is still tremendous. But the ability to provide them just data and to have them cache it is huge in allowing us to scale to that level. And the second point is ease of integration. So we're providing them a JSON format response. Our developers know how to write it. Their developers know how to write to it. It makes everything super easy. And it really efficiently distributes the work between our teams because our team is providing the geographically organized data that we know how to do, that's our core competency, and they're providing the editorial sensibility and the CNN brand and UX that they know how to do. And perhaps most interestingly, we have this great flexibility for developing new features without going back to contract, without amending our agreement with them in any way. So I'm just going to walk you through how our integration with CNN has evolved in the time that we've been providing them with headlines. So we started out with this homepage integration that I showed you earlier. A user enters their zip code or their city, and they get back 3 headlines from Outside In that area, and with always at least one CNN affiliate story shown. So this was actually, we integrated into a UI that CNN had already built out, and by providing them a data format, it was really, I don't want to say it was completely painless, but it was very easy to integrate. And they were able to use the exact same data calls to power headlines, local headlines on their iPhone app, which is the #1 paid news app in the iTunes store. So a few months after we launched the initial homepage and iPhone app integration, we built a new parameter to our API, which is a keyword search parameter. And CNN leveraged this in a pretty cool way by picking some keywords that were relevant to politics. And they were able to build a module on cnn.com/politics that shows only politically relevant feeds. And more recently, a few weeks ago, they took this really to the next level. And this is where it gets really exciting because they brought together their data and our data to make a new application. So this is their election center, which just launched, I think, 2 weeks ago. And so a user comes, enters their zip code or city. It's the same from the user perspective as the homepage integration. But what CNN is doing is they're matching it to their knowledge of what congressional district that zip code or city is in, and pulling out the names of all the candidates that are running for office in that district. And so they pass us not only the location, but also the name of every candidate running in that district. And so we can send them back really interesting local headlines about the political races that are going on in the user's area. And this has been huge for us. We're so impressed that our data is doing this, and it's kind of making us step back and say, wow, we could do something like this on our own site. We already have the capability. So that's the story of how tiny, scrappy startup Outside In is providing hyperlocal headlines to CNN.com. A couple of months, after we piloted with CNN, we added a few more features, launched our API publicly, and you can check it out at developers.outside.in if you're interested. I wrote the documentation. I think it's fabulous, I hope. And overall, I think this really solidified our image of ourselves as a data platform, as this being the value that we're adding to the internet. And that's all I have. I've got some contact info if you want to talk to me.
Oh, I didn't get it. How did you find each other in the first place? You just do a blind call over there, or what?
LinkedIn?
LinkedIn.
Yeah, that's Team Outside In over there. They came to root me on.
Oh, yay, team.
Yeah.
That's like half the company over there.
Pretty much.
Okay. You just like approached them on LinkedIn and said, we've got this thing, and they said yes? That's moderately miraculous.
They signed up for one of our existing services.
Okay.
And explored us that way.
Okay.
And it grew from there. It was love at first sight.
That's so beautiful.
Yeah.
It's like, I mean, it's a meet cute. And had they not invested in you, would you be making money from this?
They're paying us a license fee for the data we provide them. Yeah.
They just gave you a flat license fee?
Yeah.
And you were like totally thrilled with that, right? That was like not really a heavy negotiation, probably. What's it done to your own?
I can't speak
What's
to the
it done to your own
negotiation.
traffic?
So we're actually, this is not sending a ton of traffic to Outside In, our main site. What we're doing is we're sending traffic back to the people who are publishing this content. And
What's
so
it done to their traffic?
That's
you know?
a good question. I can't give you stats off the top of my head, unfortunately.
Okay,
But
and I mean, it strikes me, this is going to get kind of inside here, but this is sort of like CNN coming at AOL Patch, isn't it? AOL Patch is a local news business that AOL is starting.
We see Patch as being in a pretty different business from us because they're creating their own content. We don't write a stitch of content. We're going out and taking content that's out there and organizing it by geography.
But you're giving local voices national platforms.
That's true.
And that's what Patch
that is
really
a
is
good point.
about. It's like the crazy stuff will filter up to the top really quickly and then get blasted out.
Well,
And
in our
CNN is
case,
looking
we're
for that.
hoping that it's not the crazy stuff that filters up to the top, but like the really super
I meant good
relevant-
crazy.
Good crazy. Okay.
Yeah.
Not like crazy crazy.
Well,
Okay.
that too, but you know, that's up to the good people at CNN. So, does it change your business? Well, obviously, having CNN in there changes your business. Do you see other places you might take this? Can you offer up this API elsewhere?
We can, and it's offered publicly up to a certain threshold for free. So because we really want Joe developers, I think somebody called them earlier today, weekend hackers, to be able to build cool apps for, off of our data for us, I said. But you know, it really is selfish, right? And then after a certain volume, we ask people to come to us and we develop one-off business terms.
Yeah.
So
I think this is going to grow like crazy because one of the things that's interesting here is you kind of are a good example of people redefining content or broadening out what content is. There didn't used to be this many people you could find, and now you've got all this content, and you identify a very narrow geography for it.
yeah, it's like I feel like we're in the business of metadata on top of content. So
Yeah.
it's like another content layer.
And then, so you've got that kind of content. How do you take it out into the public? It's a good one. Anybody have questions? Yes.
How do you find the RSS feed?
Good question. So we actually have a small editorial staff that has found them very deliberately. We do get some user submissions. So we have this other side of our business where we cater to bloggers and tell them the value of being in our network. But especially when we have specific coverage needs, such as when we developed, along with CNN, their new election center, we went out and very specifically looked for politics feeds. We went and found all the feeds published by everyone running for office all over the country.
All right. Other questions? Sir.
Is the value add that you're taking in RSS feeds on one side, pushing it out as an API, the other side is more searchable?
Well,
Why don't you repeat the question? Is the value add taking RSS feeds, pushing them out, and making them more searchable?
I think the value is making them easier to develop against. Well, it's twofold. One, we're organizing them. We're adding all this geographic metadata that you can't necessarily see just in the RSS feed. And the other is that, right, providing it in a programmatic format makes it easier for someone to develop on top of it.
All right. Okay. All right. Well, thanks very much.
Thanks.
Okay.